Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this recorded online class. We have a 30-minute session today that I'm recording, and what we're going to do is to have a talk about the Benin bronzes. So the subject is African art. Now, what we're going to do first, if you may not be so familiar with the topic, is to have a look at a short video. It's 3 minutes in length. We'll look at that first. I will also provide you with a transcript of the video, and we'll take a quick look at that. And then we're going to read through and discuss an article about the same subject. So I will go through, discuss some of the vocabulary and pose some discussion questions for you. Now, just to let you know that this material comes from the Open University and based in the UK, so I will share some resources with you so you can access some more information and different topics from their YouTube website. First, I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what I'm seeing, and then we will get underway. We'll just take a quick moment. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen now. Right, what we're going to look at first is I'm going to go to here we go. Here's a Word document, and just make that a little bit bigger there. Okay. Well, first we'll have a look at this video. As I said, it's from the Open University website, but we're going to watch it on YouTube. And this is a video, and it's entitled, "What are the Benin bronzes?" Now you can see a picture here of, these are one of the artworks that it's talking about, and these are obviously from the African country of Benin, which were artworks that ended up being taken to the UK and Europe under quite bad circumstances. So let's get a bit more about that history first, and then we'll come back and go through some vocabulary terms. So let me just try to take us to the video. Okay.
These are the Benin bronzes, some of the greatest African art ever made, and we stole them. At the end of the 19th century, the British Empire spanned a quarter of the world. The other European nations wanted their own empires, and a huge land grab began. Africa was a land of opportunity. Britain took control of what is now Nigeria and crushed local rulers, all except the defiant king of Benin. Benin had grown from a city into an empire and had become a hotbed of artistic skill and trade. The best artists produced beautiful and intricate bronze plaques to decorate the king's palace, and they even began taxing imports and exports to their kingdom. This made the local British officials angry, and they demanded Benin be taken by force, and Benin's treasures be used to pay for the cost. A mission was launched to teach them a lesson. The 9 British officers, with their 250 porters, were ambushed and killed. Stupidly, their weapons were locked away in a trunk. The British now had an excuse for war. This expedition met fierce resistance. Eventually, the city fell, and burning and looting ensued. The main prize? The beautiful bronze plaques. The annihilation of Benin was really a show of muscle by the British Empire, a warning not to resist British power. Most of the stolen bronzes were sold to pay for the expedition. Many went to the British Museum. Today, only a handful remain in Nigeria. The bronzes caused quite a stir at the time. Many refused to believe Africans could produce such beautifully crafted art. Ironically, their theft brought them worldwide recognition and appreciation. Our own Queen was given a bronze by a wayward Nigerian president who had borrowed it from the National Museum, reigniting the controversy. So our Queen unwittingly fenced stolen goods, unlike the Victorians who knowingly did so 100 years ago. To find out more, go to www.openuniversity.co.uk/Benin.
Okay, so as you can see, that's a very short history of the Benin bronzes, where they came from and where they ended up. Now, that was a little quick. If you couldn't hear all the words on the video, there is a you can see here. What you can do is you can go onto the website and download a transcript of that video, and so this goes through. This is the complete transcript for the video. There were just a couple of things in there that I will point out. Oops, I'm sorry, my screen's going all over the place. When in the last sentence they said, so our Queen, obviously it's a British person who's speaking, unwittingly fenced stolen goods. When we talk about fencing stolen goods, we're talking about someone who receives stolen goods and then sells them on to somebody else. So this is obviously an illegal activity, but we talk about someone being a fence when they are they kind of are the middleman between a thief, someone who's taken the goods to start with, and received those goods, and they may or may not sell them on to another person. Okay. All right, so let's have a look at this article that I have found. Now, this article is from a journalist by Soraya Ebrahimi, that is her name, and if you want to get the online version, you can just search up the title here. Okay, the title of the article is Germany to return looted bronzes to Nigeria next year. Okay, so I'll just make this a little bit bigger because I want to make sure we can see everything. Yeah, okay. So what I've done is just highlighted some terms in the text that we will discuss now in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the idea being that Germany is going to return some of these bronzes to Nigeria next year. So Benin was the kingdom in Africa that is now part of Nigeria. Okay, so when we talk about looting or something that has been looted, looted would be the adjective, we're talking about something that is something that's been wrongly emptied or stripped of value. Okay, so that means if you're saying, well, the robbers have left the looted train, that means the train's been looted, everything has been everything of value has been taken from the train. Okay, so when they're talking about looted works of art, they mean works of art that have been taken from somewhere, pretty much illegally, like or wrongfully. So in this case, these bronzes have been taken from Benin and removed wrongfully. Usually we talk about things being looted in times of war, obviously because soldiers quite often in the old days would they would take over a town or a city, and they would loot and take treasures, artworks, that kind of thing. You also see looting happening in times of chaos. For example, if there's quite often in a riot, people will loot from shops. In the riots last year in the US, people were burning shops, and there was also some looting that went on of shops. You saw people carrying away TVs or just things of value. So a shop would be looted by looters, Looters. Okay, so if you're a looter, you're carrying away your loot from the looted shop. Okay. All right, so there's a lot of looting going on. Right, so these bronzes here, this is a depiction of one of the works of art that we're discussing. Now, okay, so here, I'll just read through it, and then I'll discuss the vocab as we go through, which you can see I've made in little comments at the side. Okay, so Germany plans to hand back ancient pillaged artworks known as the Benin bronzes to Nigeria next year. So pillaged is just another word for looted. So quite often we use these two words together because they mean exactly the same thing. They mean to wrongfully empty or strip anything of value. So quite often we say to loot and pillage. I don't know why we use two words, they mean exactly the same thing. But this is a bit of a small phrase, I suppose. For example, we quite often would say things like, the Romans looted and pillaged their way across Europe. So it just means they looted in Europe. Okay, so that's the first one. The second sentence says, most European former colonial powers in recent years have begun a process of considering the return, so they're thinking about returning looted artifacts to the former colonies, especially in Africa. So why I highlighted artifacts here is because we're talking about things that usually reside in museums. Okay, so we could say objects, and here further down in the text we can see objects, but objects and artifacts are the way we normally refer to man-made things having some cultural significance that are usually displayed in a museum or possibly an art gallery. Okay, so you can see two spellings of artifact. You might come across artifact, A-R-T-E. You may also come across artifact, A-R-T-I. Okay, both are correct. Artifact with an E tends to be used in British spelling. Artifact with an I tends to be used in the USA. However, there is some overlap now because you can see both spellings in Britain and the UK and the US. Okay, so yeah, we tend to talk about museums displaying or exhibiting artifacts. That's the common kind of way that we would describe things being, objects being shown in a museum. Okay, the next sentence. We want to contribute to understanding and reconciliation with the descendants of those whose cultural treasures were stolen during colonization. Okay, so we're talking about countries that used to be colonial powers. So a colonial power means a country that used to have, used to govern another country. So for example, the UK was a colonial power because they colonized many African countries and countries all around the world, basically. Colonization means the process of colonizing another country or being colonized. Okay, so what they're seeking is reconciliation. So reconciliation, when we talk about reconciliation, you're talking about the act of having two things become compatible with one another. Okay, so to reconcile means that you must have two things that, or two people that used to get on well, used to be friends, used to be in a relationship, that subsequently had some kind of maybe argument or dispute and are now not friends, but they want to become friends again. Okay, so you want to reestablish good relationships between two bodies, two parties, two people. Okay, so so you need two things, and you also need to have two things that used to have a good relationship that needs to be reestablished. Okay, another way of saying that is rapprochement, which would be the word that comes from the French, which means the same thing. But so to reconcile, when we talk about reconcile, you can say things like, I have reconciled with my former boyfriend. Okay, we did break up, but now we're back together again. Okay, or you can also use it in a way which is not talking about personal relations, but you can talk about reconciling more in a financial sense. So, for example, I need to reconcile my spending with my bank account, because if you need to do this, that means that you're spending too much. You don't have enough money in your bank account, so you need to reconcile. You need to get those things in balance again and stop spending so much. That's something I need to do. Okay. And this lady goes on to say, we expect the first returns of bronzes to take place in the year 2022. The 16th to 18th century metal plaques and sculptures. A metal plaque would be a flat piece of metal that would sit on a wall. The metal plaques and sculptures that decorated the royal palace of Benin are amongst the most highly regarded works of African art. Now, when we say highly regarded, we're using that in the means of, or in the meaning of, to respect and admire something. So we say these artworks are highly regarded. Um, if we're talking about another person, we might say to hold someone in high regard or to hold something in high regard. You can also say to send someone your regards, okay, or to give someone your regards. If I meet a friend in the street and we talk about a mutual friend that we have in common, I might say to my friend, "Oh, if you're going to see George tomorrow, please give him my regards." Okay, that just means please kind of send him my good wishes and say hello from me, and I'd like to pay my respects to him. Okay. All right, so moving on. The next sentence we have is, the Ethnological Museum in Berlin has 530 historical objects. Remember, we could say objects here, or we could say artifacts from the ancient kingdom, including 440 bronzes. It is considered to be the most important collection outside London's British Museum. So why do we say collection? Well, we can say a collection of anything. You can have a collection of stickers, you can have a collection of cars, okay? But when we talk about museums, we specifically use, where we talk about a number of different works of art that are made to be seen or stored together. We specifically use this phrase in a museum setting. So we would say a museum collection, an art collection, a music collection. Okay, and it would be a collection of artifacts. Okay, then we talk about the next sentence. About 180 of the bronzes are due to be exhibited this year in Berlin's Humboldt Forum, a new museum complex that opened in December. Okay, so why do we say complex? Complex, obviously, we know means like very complicated, very detailed, something that has many moving parts. Okay, when we talk about a building complex, we mean it in the way of a whole structure, for example, a building, which can be made up of interconnected or related structures. So, for example, we might talk about a museum complex because it has many interrelated buildings. We might also use it for a private home I have an instance here where it makes sense to talk about a complex. Okay, so let's have a look at Bill Gates's $1 million, $127 million mansion. Okay, so we would refer to a house like this as a complex because, as we can see, it comprises many different buildings. Okay, so it makes sense to talk about Bill Gates's house like this. It doesn't make sense to talk about my house like that. Okay, let me go back to here. Okay, so a museum complex, obviously it makes sense to talk about a museum complex if it's a large a large collection of interconnected or related structures. Okay, so the key point is they need to be interconnected. You need to have like ways to move between the different buildings so that they are connected and joined in some way. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so Nigeria's ambassador to Germany had called for the bronzes to be returned. And on Wednesday, Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said Berlin was working with those involved in Nigeria and Germany on the future of the objects. Okay, an honest approach to colonial history also includes the question of restitution of cultural assets. Okay, so when we talk about restitution, we can use this in a couple of different ways. It means both restoring something to its original state. So I might talk about the restitution of an environment, for example. If that environment has been overdeveloped or damaged in some way, you might want to take it back to its state before it was damaged, okay? But it also means, and in this context, it means returning something to its rightful owner, okay? So this could be by making a public apology, because in that way, you might be able to restore that person their honor and their reputation. Okay, so if you said something bad about someone in public, and your way of making restitution might be to apologize and say why it was unfair of you to describe that person in that way. Or it could also be returning something to its rightful owner in a way where you're returning an object to someone, or you are paying someone. For example, if you steal someone's car and you crash the car, obviously you can't give the car back, but you could make restitution through paying money to that person. Okay, so there are different ways of making restitution. Okay, so it could be an apology, it could be a returning an object, or it could be paying for damage that you have caused. Okay, so and this can actually have a specific legal meaning. So a judge could order a convicted criminal to make restitution, to make amends for their crime, and this quite often can be a payment. Okay, so you can pay restitution if you're talking about money, or you can make restitution. In this case, they would be making restitution because they would be returning those objects to Nigeria. Okay, and then in our final piece of vocab, last month the University of Aberdeen in Scotland agreed to return a Benin bronze sculpture to Nigeria, saying it was acquired by British soldiers in 1897 in reprehensible circumstances. Now, when we talk about something being reprehensible, this is a really strong word, okay? So it's really for the very bad, a really bad situation. Okay, so something where you want to strongly blame or criticize another person, but you'd only use it in the most kind of severe of circumstances. Okay, so we would, if we're talking here about reprehensible circumstances, that's because the British basically stole these objects from Benin and in a very violent manner. So that was obviously a situation in which we can strongly blame Britain, okay? But I mean, you can also use it for if you want to emphasize something a lot. You could say, my child's report card was reprehensible. So obviously if your child didn't make any effort to study for their exam, you would call them reprehensible for not studying. Say his behavior was reprehensible. You could also say it in the way of, if we're talking about Bill Gates and his $127 million house, you could say, Bill Gates, when there are so many people living in poverty, I think Bill Gates lives in reprehensible luxury. So even though we talk about luxury being something positive, we can call it reprehensible luxury if we feel that he has too much money and it's not fair for him to have that much money when there are so many people living in poverty. In that case, his situation is reprehensible. Okay, so those are the vocab items, and that's pretty much the end of the article, except it goes on to say that this situation is causing pressure on other institutions, such as the British Museum, to return or to make restitution of the bronzes to Nigeria. Okay, now here there are some links at the bottom of the article, which I will send around to those of you who are watching this video. And there's a link here to an article which is interesting that Boris Johnson has, this is the complete opposite situation where Boris Johnson has said that the Greek Elgin marbles are not going to be returned to Greece. These are three articles that also quite short articles which are on related topics, which I think you might find interesting. I've also put a link here to a 30-minute YouTube video called Art, Loot and Empire. And before you get too scared and say, no, I don't want to watch that, it's too long, you can also find a transcript to this, which I will post as well. So that's another good learning resource there about this same topic. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this online lesson. I will make all these resources available to you, but as I say, the Open University channel, I'll just quickly flick onto it here, has some lots of really good short YouTube. Oh, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, come back to me. The Open University website, YouTube site does have some very good short YouTube videos, and you can also get and download transcripts for most of those videos as well. So that's a really good learning resource for you guys, if you're interested. Okay, so thank you very much for tuning into today's class. I will stop now and see you all next time. Thank you.